Hi there, and welcome to today's episode of A Different Way of Seeing, a podcast where we talk all things disability. I'm your host, Lois, and today we are joined all the way from New Orleans in Louisiana in the USA by Dana Garrett. Dana, welcome to A Different Way of Seeing. It is great to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to finally meet you virtually and share a little bit of our story, and hopefully it can help other families like ours.
Well, I was really intrigued to read a little bit about your story on a podcasting group on Facebook. And as soon as I saw what you were sharing, I was like, this is a lady that I really want to speak to. So I'm really glad we could make the time.
Yes, I would love to share and I'm happy to be on.
Great. Well, I suppose the best place for us to start is just to ask you to introduce yourself to the audience and give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. Like you said, my name's Dana Garrett. I'm an autism mom. I'm a special needs family advocate, and I'm also a self-published children's book author. I live in Southeast Louisiana with my husband and two kids. I graduated from Louisiana State University in communication studies, and little did I know how much I would need to use that once my daughter was born. She'll be 13 next week. So, yeah, we've had quite the journey.
So just talking about your daughter, I saw from what you shared with me that you are in fact a mom to a neurodiverse daughter who is nonverbal. So tell me a little bit about how it happened and how you felt when she received her diagnosis. What age was she? Just tell us a little bit about that story.
Sure. She was actually, when she was around 12 months old, we noticed that she had some delays. And we noticed that she wasn't babbling or saying any yes or no or mama. And so we immediately put her in speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, even at that young of an age. And we went to a developmental pediatrician, and they told us that she was just a late bloomer, and that she would catch up eventually. And a couple of years went by, and she still hadn't caught up. So we ended up actually going the blood test route, and we got the chromosomal microarray blood test done, and that came back normal. So we really weren't sure where to go from there. And my husband's cousin told us about it's called whole exome sequencing blood test. And that's where we got her rare diagnosis. It's called Coffin-Siris syndrome. And she has a genetic mutation on one of her genes. So we got that diagnosis first. And then through school, one of her teachers told us that she was responding really well to ABA techniques in the classroom and that we should get her diagnosed or looked at again from a neurologist. And she finally got her autism diagnosis then around 6 years old. But this whole time, she was still nonverbal and she was having behavior issues. She was having trouble learning. So she was having intellectual disability issues on top of that. So when she got her autism diagnosis, and I guess the one before that, I had a mixed feeling of emotions. I think a part of me was relieved because it had been years of misdiagnosis and searching and researching and trying to figure it out for ourselves when the doctors didn't know. So we knew she needed a diagnosis to get the qualifying services at school. So I was relieved on that side of things. On the other side, um, I also felt like I was going through stages of grief that no one prepares you for. I grieved the child that I thought she would be. I danced when I was little. Um, I did ballet, tap, and jazz. So, I bought her first pair of ballet slippers before she was born,
Mm.
and things like that. They're not completely impossible, but I just mourned the fact that it would look different than what I had in mind. And I think a lot of parents can relate to that too, that there's a grieving process that no one prepares you for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose in many ways it's a little like myself, I have my blindness is an acquired disability. And I think there is a difference between being born with a disability in the way you adjust and the way you grow up, and then the change that happens and the grieving that does happen with an acquired disability. And I can imagine that in a similar way, the experience that you had being a mom to a little girl who you had all these dreams for and realizing that that must look a little bit different.
Yes.
How do you communicate now with your daughter if she is nonverbal? I'm sure you have all sorts of different techniques and tools that you use. Can you share a little bit about some of those with us?
Yes. So I talk to her just like I talk to my 6-year-old son. I know she understands what I'm saying. So I always have presumed competence with her. So I speak to her how I would talk to anyone else.
Yeah.
Uh, Her replies are through sign language. And she also has a device that she uses that she's um, learning to request food. She's learning to request where she wants to go. And she's starting to learn how to express her feelings on the device, which is amazing.
Hmm.
But she's very expressive. She's nonverbal, but she's the loudest nonverbal child you'll ever meet. She laughs really loud. She cries really loud. She loves to dance. But a lot of the communication I have with her, I usually use the talker and I use my voice. I use sign language and I use my voice. So it's multiple ways of communicating depending on where we are,
Yeah.
how she's feeling. So if she's having a big emotion, I usually just use the talker or I just use sign.
Hmm.
And if she's happy and she's trying to tell me, what she wants to eat for dinner, I'll have her get up and show me the actual ingredients to help me make it. So there's quite a few different ways that we communicate, and she's she's taught me that there are so many different ways to communicate besides just using words.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's lovely. At, when she's happy and things are good, it's lovely. But when it's stressful and she's having a meltdown, it's also teachable moments for me as well as her.
Well, can you share some of the realities of having a daughter with a disability and how that impacts on your role as parents? Because I'm sure it must have some rather far-reaching effects and impacts on parenting.
Yes, of course. It's something at first that you think will break you,
Mm.
but what happens is it strengthens you and it
Yeah.
makes you unbreakable. The stares don't bother me anymore in public. When doctors and teachers tell me what they think she won't be able to do in her life, now I politely disagree because she proves them wrong and she
Yeah.
proves me wrong time and time again. Um, it's not all sunshine. Small daily tasks feel like climbing mountains. Getting her dressed on time for school, that's hard. Meltdowns in public, they're sometimes they're disappointing to me because I feel like we've worked so hard and then we do find a trigger that will upset her. And I'm right there with her. I know she's frustrated and it makes me frustrated too. I try to separate that, but it's hard not to just put yourself in her shoes and just be as frustrated as her. But learning and teaching her how to use a device, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
it's rewarding, but it's also difficult. I had to learn how to use and navigate the app just like she does. And that takes time. It's not just something that we're born knowing. It's a device like a computer or any type of app. So it's a learning curve for me too. Um, but yeah, she has taught me, I think, how to be a resilient parent,
Mm-hmm.
and she's taught us how to just roll with it. If we're out in public and she has a meltdown, we can usually figure out, my husband and I, to decide if it's worth leaving or if it's a teachable moment for her and we need to stay and we need to talk her through it.
Yeah.
And so I've learned a lot of, um, how to stay calm in those moments to myself,
Mm.
as far as like um, breathing techniques, grounding, using a calm voice, not meeting her where she is emotionally. She's taught me
Mm-hmm.
all those things, and they're valuable in every aspect of my life, not just parenting.
And what sort of routines for your own self-care as parents, have you managed to put in place to just give you some breathing time, some downtime, if you do ever feel that you need it?
Right. Yep. So really just if she had a meltdown and I feel like I'm escalating, I usually go outside, I take my shoes off, I stand in the grass and I do some grounding
Mm-hmm.
and I do some breathing. I use essential oils a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have an essential oil called grounding. So I'll bring that
Mm.
out there with me and rub it on my hands and breathe it in while I'm taking those slow breaths. And yeah, I've done a lot of research on um, how to care for yourself, not just a bubble bath. Sometimes it's quiet. It's just a quiet moment. The TV's off, the screen's off, and it's sitting. I'm a writer, so journaling
Mhm.
helps me navigate through that. Sometimes I want to type, and sometimes I want to handwrite. And those are probably the three biggest things: grounding, journaling, and breathing. Breathing you can do anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's probably one of the most important ways to control your emotions. And I try to teach her, breathe in through your nose for 5, breathe out through your nose for 5. And that's the most natural way of breathing for humans. And we've gotten away from that. I think we've put that on the back burner,
Mm-hmm.
and actually the most powerful tool.
It is indeed. Can you suggest what sort of tools and resources that you found have assisted you in this? Because if there are other parents listening or people who are experiencing the same or similar challenges, what do you have any advice for kind of tools or apps or things like that, or books or any resources that you have found have been invaluable to you?
Sure, as far as books, the one that's on my desk right here, it's called Sincerely Your Autistic Child.
Mm-hmm.
It says what people on the autism spectrum wish their parents knew about growing up, acceptance, and identity. And that's an amazing book. It's through the eyes of someone with autism, and so they've grown up and they're able to express themselves. So that's a good one. Um, I find a lot of resources through the Facebook groups. Um, Especially there's one called Nonverbal Autism, and it's a community that you're in there with other people who get it. A lot of people are newly diagnosed, asking a lot of questions. So I like to go in there and I'll every few days go in there and just comment on the newly diagnosed posts and just give them, whatever tips and tricks that I know and that have worked for us. And especially if they express it the same journey that we had.
Yeah.
You know, she was recently diagnosed at 5. She's still not talking. Where do we go from here? The doctor suggested therapy. We're not sure about therapy, and I'm very much pro physical therapy to start if they're really young, because that gets their brain moving. And once you have their brain working in that physical way, they can absorb the
Yeah.
speech better. And so I'm always commenting on those groups. I think that's a great resource. And then we also have a ABA parent training course that we take. And it helps us navigate when she does have a meltdown. It helps us when she has OCD behaviors. It teaches us what to do. And that's through ABA clinics. But I do know that more BCBAs are coming out with parent training guides, and you can search for those online, and those help a lot, especially if someone is on a wait list for therapy, but they're still having these behaviors they're trying to manage at home and they have no idea what to do. You can look up parent training guides online, and they have a lot of good resources there.
I'm
And
Carol.
yes, another one I would say is community, in-person community events with other families that have, neurodiverse kids, is a great thing to do. To be there in person, to share resources in person, locally. What doctor do you use? What school's working
Mhm.
best? What teacher do you know that will help them with tutoring? And I think that's a really valuable
Yeah.
resource, which I can tell you more about that because I've created one here.
Well, we will chat about that in a moment, but I'm sitting in a position where I'm feeling somewhat embarrassed because this is very different from my lived experience. I don't have children. I am not myself neurodiverse. Well, I suppose I think we actually all are to a degree, but I certainly don't have a diagnosis of neurodiversity. And you've been referring to a couple of terms that are unfamiliar to me. So I wonder if you could just clarify the meanings of ABA, and I think it was
A
ACBA.
BCBA.
Yeah. So
So
what did those stand for?
ABA is applied behavior analysis.
Okay.
So these are people that study behavior, they study neurodiversity, they study autism, and they're able to apply certain techniques to navigate them through their high behaviors. And the BCBA is just the head of the ABA clinic. And so she's like the principal,
Okay.
I would say,
Super.
of that type of clinic. Yes. So this is a type of therapy that some people love, and their children respond really well to it, like mine. And then some kids would rather stay in mainstream school, and they can bring an ABA tech with them to school to help them navigate school and everything like that.
Super. Thank you for explaining that. I want to turn a little bit to the work that you are doing, particularly around supporting caregivers, and just to understand a little bit about the journey that you've had being such an active ally of persons with disabilities, neurodiversity, and their caregivers. So, what started you on that journey? Is that entirely inspired by being the mom of a daughter who's neurodiverse, or is it a broader kind of journey that you've been on with that?
So it's been since, yes, of course, since Elena started having issues in school and she had trouble speaking. I looked for resources that were not available at the time. So what motivated me now is to create something that was not available for me then. So I'm also a contributing writer for New Orleans Mom. It's a platform here locally, and I talk a lot about special needs families. I talk a lot about what I've learned in the past 12 years as an autism mom, and basically the emotions behind it, how to advocate for your children successfully. There's a lot of good information there, and I write about 2 posts a month, so there's more to come. I think I have about 22 posts so far, and I just started writing last year for them. So hopefully, my goal is for someone, a parent that has a res- looking for a resource online, newly diagnosed, they can go and they can find my page and they can, okay, everything's laid out for me here. It's all kind of in one place. And then I also created an in-person community. It's called the North Shore Special Needs Family Meetups, and it's a group meet app that basically you connect with other families like yours. And like I said, to share resources, to share struggles, to share wins, to share what's working, what's not working. And within that group, I also host a monthly Bible study where we're in one room, and then we have staff to take care of the kids in the other room, so the parents can really decompress, listen to the gospel, and then they can also share. It's a type of therapy session for us, really, to be able to just reflect and talk and listen while we know our kids are being taken care of in the next room. So I set that up. And then we also have Sunday strolls on the lakefront, which is for the whole family to meet and to walk and to regroup for the next week. And really just to get outside in the afternoon before sunset. A lot of these kids really sleep well if they get enough outdoor, not even activity, just to be outside, just to get some fresh air, and not be stuck in a classroom or a building. So that inspired that. And then I also invite specialists to come and speak. So someone maybe that has their own speech therapy clinic will come and talk and answer questions, because a speech session or a doctor's appointment only lasts so long, and you really can't get those types of answers in one appointment. So we do that through Zoom. And then we also meet up at sensory friendly playgrounds and restaurants. Um, and, a lot of that stemmed from, like I said, what I was searching for when she was first diagnosed.
Yeah.
But I also, what I think is really interesting, is that I researched Blue Zone communities and what they all have in common as their number one habit for longevity is community.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. There's other things also, healthy eating, outdoors, things like that. But community was the number one. And I thought that was so interesting, because families like mine tend to isolate ourselves, right? Because we don't want to go out in public, because it could trigger a meltdown, and we don't want to get the stares. We don't want to have to navigate in the real world that's really not set up for them to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice by staying home and not being around other families like ours, because I think that is one of the keys to keeping us as parents healthy emotionally, but also for the kids. When the kids see that we're connecting and they can see other kids like them, just out in public or at a playground or somewhere like that, I think it has a huge impact. And just to navigate, this life and all that comes with it, with other families that get it, I think is so important.
I think community is such an important part of any experience because thinking particularly around disability, there's the reassurance of being around people who know and understand and who share similar experiences, while also, and I believe this I'm kind of sensing that you're saying that being a part of normalizing a disability or a neurodiversity into society is equally important because, particularly with children, if they grow up as seeing those who are a little bit different, who are as being just normal, like them,
Yeah.
it really is a very important step because children who understand that disability is not a separation or a segregation, it those are going to be adults who grow up already understanding that. And I think that's a
Yes.
very strong way of
And
building
that's
a better world. Yeah, a
right.
more inclusive world.
And that's one of the main reasons why I write these books too,
Uh,
to
talking
target
about
the children.
yeah, talking about the book, let's learn a little bit more about those because I'm really wanting to know and learn about your journey as a writer. So tell us about the books.
Sure. So far I've self-published two books. It's a series called Elena and Wyatt's Adventures. I
Mhm.
include Elena in the book with her AAC device, which is her iPad. And I thought that was really important because, like I said, when she first got her talker, I looked for books that had a
Mhm.
little girl with a talker and could not find one. And I said, okay, well, I think this is a sign that I need to maybe figure out how to do this and create one.
Yeah.
Um, and so her little brother Wyatt is her sidekick in the books,
Mhm.
and he's a big Boy Scout. He likes to go camping, so he brings in a little bit of that type of knowledge to try to introduce to kids.
Mhm.
There's more than just screens and school. There's a
Yeah.
whole world out there. Um, and they go on adventures where they meet new friends who need their help. And then they're actually at the same time learning about Elena and how she communicates. So the new friends take away something new that they didn't know about her. Um, and they teach about differences. We talk, and the message really throughout is that everyone belongs.
Yeah.
And so I do a lot of comparisons in there. Like, hey, well, the flamingo dances and the flamingo does this and the flamingo doesn't talk. And we all love flamingos, So it's little comparisons like that that kids would understand. And my goal really is not only to create the series that the nonverbal kids can see themselves in, but it's also to educate the neurotypical kids. It's to educate the kids that have never been exposed to a child like Elena.
Mhm.
Growing up, I really did not see kids use sign language. I didn't see kids have expressive, explosive, emotional meltdowns in public. I don't ever remember seeing that. So I think starting at a young age, if we can read these books to these kids, through storytelling, they will be more aware and they'll be more accepting and they'll understand more about it because usually bullying is stemmed just from kids not understanding.
Mhm.
And it's almost like a fear they have because it's something foreign to them and they don't understand it. So I think through the storytelling, starting in elementary school, I'm spreading awareness and ultimately acceptance. Awareness is great. Let's start with awareness. but the ultimate goal is acceptance
Yes.
for kids like Elena to be included in the cafeteria, for Elena to be included to on the playground, for her to be included and invited to a birthday party. And those are the kind of things that we have to take a step further. I think we've been doing amazing things with awareness, but acceptance
Mm.
for me is the ultimate goal.
That sense of belonging is so fundamentally important to our self-perception and our perception of others. I think it's a really fundamentally important concept. And I love what I'm hearing you saying because, to me, I ascribe very much to the theory that books are windows into other worlds that allow us to understand others' experiences, but they are also mirrors back to our own experience. And if we don't see ourselves represented in the books that we're reading, how do we then self identify? So, just from what you're saying, I think it's a very important position to be taking to show both the role of what Elena's reality is like, and how Wyatt, her younger brother, how he engages with her, and then also to show to other kids that there's no difference here except for the tools and techniques that are used. They're just
Yes.
kids like everybody else. And I think that's such a beautiful message. So are the books out in the world? Are they available, or what is the situation with your series so far?
Yes. The first two books are out on Amazon. So you can search in Amazon for Elena and Wyatt's Adventures, and they'll pop up. And there's also coloring books and guided journals. The guided journals are more for the caregivers. So I've created a couple of different ones. One's about self-love, and one's about blooming where you're planted.
Hmm.
And the coloring books are for kids, and I've included positive affirmations for them to trace. And really, it's all about, for me, it's just all about them finding confidence. Writing and reading is powerful, and so all the things that I've self-published are on Amazon, and you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. And I welcome everyone who has any questions about, if they have a newly diagnosed child, the parenting journey. I welcome them to message me, and I'd be happy to answer. I read all of them.
Great. So we will include the links to your social media accounts and as well to the books on Amazon so people can access those. But if there's one, your preferred way for people to kind of reach out to you online, what would that be?
I would say Facebook. Facebook would be a good place to start. I have the links for everything else there.
Hmm.
That's where I also share all of the special needs New Orleans mom posts. That's all on Facebook. Um, so I think that would probably be the best place to start. And if
Great.
you're on Instagram, I try to include the links there too. But yeah, and
Super.
then um, you know, like I said, all these things, the books, the podcasts, or the blog posts, the local group, all this was created because these are the things I looked for when
Hmm.
Elena was newly diagnosed. So um, yeah, I'm open to answering anybody's questions, and if they have a book idea, if they'd like to see their child in the book. I also have a book that um, someone that has a disability wanted to illustrate.
Mhm.
So that's also on Amazon as a guest illustrator edition.
And
So I coached them through how to illustrate, and I put it together and published it for them. So that's another service, I guess you would call it, a service that I offer.
sounds amazing. It sounds like you have quite a broad variety of tools and resources out there alongside your books. So that sounds really great.
Yeah.
As a final question, what advice would you give to a parent whose child has just received a diagnosis of neurodiversity? Where should they start? Because it's so overwhelming. It really, I think any diagnosis um, for a parent, knowing their child is experiencing something that you don't, and it's not something you anticipated, that must be incredibly overwhelming. And so often the doctors aren't able to give you all the answers to the questions you have. So, what would advice would you give to a parent of a child with a new diagnosis?
I would tell them a few things. First, it's okay to grieve the child you thought you would have. Take your time to accept it because it's very important for you to come to terms with it and come to acceptance because when you accept it, then your child will feel that energy, that your child will accept themselves, and you can move on with the type of therapy and resources that they need. I would also like to say this is not the end of the journey. It's just the beginning of something different, and it'll bless you in ways that you can't even imagine. Also, be patient with them. Try to put yourself in their shoes when they're frustrated or if they're having a bad day. Just try to put yourself in their shoes and think about how you would react. And if you suspect something's wrong at school or with their health, trust your intuition and don't stop until you find the answer. Um, Even though you're not fully educated on their diagnosis yet, trust your intuition. It's usually right. And remember, the diagnosis is just that. Your child is still an important part of society. Your child still has a purpose. Find what they love and nurture that. I would also say don't forget to take care of yourself too. The healthier and more grounded you are, your kids will pick up on that and they'll be calmer too. Like I said, practice breathing techniques, walk outside for a few minutes after an intense behavior from them. Take some time to journal or pray. You're not alone in this. Millions of families are navigating life with neurodiverse children.
Some very practical and wise words, Dana. Dana Garrett, thank you so much for chatting to us today. Thank you for sharing some of your lived experience of being a mom to a neurodiverse daughter who is nonverbal. You've shared some incredible tools and resources and techniques that will be invaluable to other parents who are traveling similar journeys to that you and your husband are. Really, really appreciate you chatting to us today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to remind everyone that if you are engaging with the podcast or the YouTube video, to comment if you have any questions, reach out to us if you have any guest ideas, and we'd love to chat to you. And yeah, engage with the content. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.